The first thing Marlene Voss said when the package exploded in her face was not a scream, not a curse, not even my name. It was one soft, confused little word. Oh! By the time she stumbled out of the clubhouse supply room, her face, her hair, both hands, and most of her spotless white tennis outfit had turned a violent shade of electric purple. The kind of color you would expect to see on a casino sign at 2 in the morning, not on the president of a gated homeowners association in broad daylight. She had spent years stealing packages from people who trusted her, including 29 packages from my porch and dozens more from neighbors old enough to remember when milk still came in glass bottles. She thought she was opening an expensive insulated coffee mug. What she was really opening was the end of her little kingdom. My name is Calvin Mercer. I was 67 years old when all this happened, and at the time, I lived with my wife, Elaine, in a place called Copper Ridge Commons, a quiet gated neighborhood outside Mesquite, Nevada, where the houses all had tan stucco walls, clay roofs, and front yards landscaped with enough decorative gravel to make you question whether grass had ever existed. Elaine called the community pool the senior citizen soup pot, which was unfair but not completely inaccurate. We had moved there 4 years earlier after I retired from the Clark County Environmental Services Lab, where I spent nearly 3 decades testing industrial chemicals, contaminated soil, strange powders, unknown liquids, in one memorable jar labeled barbecue sauce that turned out to contain neither barbecue nor sauce. I liked evidence, I liked clean records, and I liked things that behaved according to rules. Marlene Voss liked rules too, but only when she was the one inventing them. She had been president of the Copper Ridge HOA for almost 9 years, and she carried herself like the governor of a very small, very beige country. She drove a pearl-colored Lexus SUV, wore oversized sunglasses even indoors, and had a habit of addressing grown adults as sweetheart whenever she was about to find them. The trouble started in late April with a missing box of replacement filters for Elaine's portable oxygen concentrator. The delivery photo showed the box sitting directly in front of our red front door at 12:14 in the afternoon. By 1000 due, it was gone. I assumed the driver had made a mistake. Amazon issued a replacement, and I forgot about it. Then a birthday package for our granddaughter disappeared. Then a box of specialty coffee beans. Then 2 paperback mystery novels Elaine had ordered for a neighbor recovering from knee surgery. Every time, the delivery photo was clear. Every time, the package vanished within an hour. Elaine tried to joke about it at first. Maybe the coyotes are starting an online resale business, she said one morning. I laughed, but it bothered me more than I admitted. There is something uniquely unsettling about knowing a stranger has walked up to your front door, stood where your family stands, and taken something with your name on it. It is not really about the dollar value. It is about the confidence of the hand that reaches down and assumes you will never know. After the 6th missing package, I drove into town and bought 4 motion cameras with cloud backup. Elaine stood in the driveway while I installed them and asked whether we were protecting the house or filming a low-budget spy movie. Both, I told her. 2 days later, I got my answer. At 2:38 on a Tuesday afternoon, a woman wearing a pale green HOA polo walked up our driveway, glanced toward our kitchen window, bent down, picked up a box, and carried it away like she had every right in the world. The camera caught her face clearly. Marlene Voss. I watched the clip once, then again, then a third time because sometimes the mind resists facts that arrive wearing familiar clothes. Elaine came up behind me, rested one hand on the back of my chair, and watched in silence. When the clip ended, she said, "Calvin, that is Marlene." I know. Why would she do that? I did not have an answer, but I had spent 30 years learning not to fill gaps with guesses. I saved the footage in 3 places, printed the delivery confirmation, wrote down the time, and drove to the Mesquite police station. The officer who took my report was polite and tired. He watched the clip, agreed the woman was identifiable, and explained that package theft cases were often difficult unless officers caught someone in possession of the stolen property. He told me they would make a report and contact her. The way he said it made it clear I should not expect the marching band. I went home and started a folder. Elaine wrote Porch Pirates across the front in black marker and drew a tiny skull underneath it. The next HOA meeting was held 11 days later in the Copper Ridge Clubhouse, a room with folding chairs, humming fluorescent lights, and a coffee machine that produced a brown liquid with no obvious connection to coffee. Marlene sat at the head table in a cream blazer, reading glasses balanced low on her nose, while the board discussed pool umbrellas, driveway oil stains, and whether someone on Juniper Bluff Lane had chosen an unauthorized shade of blue for a ceramic birdbath. When public comments opened, I stood with the folder under my arm and a flash drive in my hand. Marlene looked at me and smiled the way people smile when they already expect to be obeyed. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "what can the board help you with tonight?" I gave my address, described the missing packages, and told the room that my camera had recorded the person responsible. Then I plugged the drive into the clubhouse laptop. The footage appeared on the wall behind Marlene, 6 feet tall and impossible to misunderstand. There she was, walking onto my property, taking the box, and leaving. The room went so quiet I could hear the air conditioner clicking in the ceiling. Marlene watched herself steal from me, then gave a light little laugh. "Oh, Calvin," she said, "you have completely misunderstood. I was performing a neighborhood delivery safeguard. We have had concerns about outside thieves entering through the gate, so I sometimes secure unattended packages for residents." "Secure them where?" I asked. "In a safe location," she said. "Which safe location?" Her smile tightened. "That is an administrative matter." I told her the missing box contained medical equipment for my wife and asked when she planned to return it. For the first time, something moved behind her eyes. Not guilt exactly. Calculation. She promised it would be delivered the next morning. It never came. What arrived instead, 3 days later, was a certified HOA violation accusing me of harassment, public intimidation, and creating a hostile environment for volunteer board members. The fine was $600. Elaine read the letter at the kitchen counter, looked at me over the top of the page, and said, "She stole our medical supplies and fined you for noticing." "That appears to be the sequence," I said. I called an attorney named Rachel Dunning, an old friend who had spent 20 years handling property disputes and HOA litigation. I emailed her the video, the fine, and my notes. She called back 9 minutes later. "Calvin," she said, "do not pay this. Do not respond to Marlene. Do not warn her. Start documenting everyone else who may be missing packages, especially older residents, and file a complaint with the Postal Inspection Service tonight." I looked down at the folder Elaine had labeled as a joke. "Rachel, are you saying this is bigger than a neighborhood theft?" "I am saying," she replied, "that people like Marlene do not start with your porch, and they almost never stop with it." That evening, I opened a second folder, wrote Marlene Voss across the front, and began knocking on doors. The first door belonged to Marjorie Bell, a 76-year-old retired librarian who lived across from the mail kiosk and kept ceramic rabbits in her front yard even though Marlene had fined her twice for them. When I asked whether she had lost any deliveries, Marjorie went still, then invited me inside without saying a word. She brought out a grocery bag filled with printed tracking pages, refund emails, and handwritten notes. 21 packages had disappeared in 18 months, including 2 hearing aid batteries, a wool blanket from her sister in Wisconsin, and a framed photograph of her late husband in his Navy uniform. She had stopped calling customer service because the last representative asked whether she was certain she had not misplaced the boxes inside her own house. That sentence stayed with me. Marlene was not only stealing property, she was making elderly people question their own minds. Over the next 2 weeks, I knocked on 19 more doors. 15 residents admitted they had lost packages, and nearly everyone began the conversation by apologizing, as though being robbed were somehow poor manners. Arthur Pike, 82, had lost diabetic testing supplies. Louise Garner had lost birthday gifts intended for 3 grandchildren and told each child the shipment was delayed because she could not afford to replace everything at once. A widower named Benjamin Holt had lost a box containing his late wife's handwritten recipes, mailed to him by their daughter after she found them in storage. Benjamin looked at me across his kitchen table and said, "I know they are just index cards, Calvin, but they were the only place I could still see your handwriting." I sat with him for almost an hour, listening while the ice melted in the lemonade he had poured for us. By the end of that week, my folder had become 3 folders, and the total documented losses had passed $38,000. My camera showed Marlene moving through the neighborhood with the regularity of a delivery route. She knew which residents went to physical therapy on Tuesdays, which couples attended the casino buffet on Thursdays, and which widows took afternoon naps. She knew the gate attendants, the carrier schedules, and every blind corner between our streets and the clubhouse. It was not impulsive theft. It was organized, practiced, and protected by the authority she had built around herself. When residents saw the HOA president carrying a package, they assumed she was helping. That was Marlene's real disguise. Not the sunglasses or the polo shirt. Trust. Rachel helped me prepare formal statements, and I filed a detailed complaint with the Postal Inspection Service. For 9 days, nothing happened. Then Elaine's replacement oxygen filters disappeared again. We had reordered them using expedited delivery and stayed home all morning. But the carrier arrived during the 20 minutes I drove Elaine to a cardiology appointment. The camera showed Marlene at our door 7 minutes later. She took the box, looked directly into the camera, and smiled. Not accidentally, not nervously. She smiled because she knew I was watching and believed there was nothing I could do. Elaine watched the video that evening from her recliner. The clear oxygen line looped beneath her nose, and said, "She wants you to know she is not afraid." I nodded, but inside I felt something change. Until then, I had treated the matter like an investigation, a puzzle made of timestamps and tracking numbers. Seeing that smile made it personal in a way I did not like. Anger is useful in the laboratory only if you know how to keep it outside the sample. I reminded myself of that, shut the laptop, and called Rachel instead of walking across the street. The next morning, a federal postal inspector named Dana Ruiz called me from the Las Vegas field office. Her voice was calm and clipped, but not cold. She had reviewed my complaint, the videos, and 12 resident statements. She asked whether I could meet that afternoon. Dana arrived in an unmarked sedan wearing a charcoal suit and carrying a legal pad. She spent 3 hours at our kitchen table. She watched every clip, compared delivery records, and asked each question twice in slightly different ways, the way experienced investigators do when they are checking whether a story holds its shape. When she reached Marlene's smile into the camera, she paused the video and leaned closer. "That is not someone rescuing an unattended parcel," she said. "No," I replied. "That is someone sending a message." Dana asked whether any missing deliveries contained government mail, prescription medication, bank records, or identifying information. I showed her statements from Arthur, Marjorie, and 4 others. Her expression changed when she read that several Social Security notices and Medicare documents had also vanished. She drew a line across her legal pad and said, "Mr. Mercer, this is no longer a series of neighborhood complaints. This is a pattern of federal mail theft involving vulnerable victims, medical supplies, and possible identity fraud. I would like to arrange a controlled delivery." Elaine, who had been quietly making tea at the counter, set down the kettle and asked, "Does controlled mean you are finally going to catch her holding the box?" Dana looked at her. "That is exactly what it means." The plan was simple on paper. A parcel would be mailed to our address through the postal system, delivered under observation, and monitored from the moment the carrier placed it on our porch. If Marlene took it, federal agents would have an uninterrupted evidentiary chain. Dana warned me not to confront her and not to place anything dangerous inside the box. I told her I understood. Then she noticed the old environmental lab credentials framed on the wall beside the kitchen. "You worked with tracer compounds," she said, "for many years. Non-toxic forensic markers, among other things." Dana studied me for a moment, then closed the folder in front of her. "I cannot advise a private citizen to alter evidence or create a device that could injure someone. I would never ask you to." "Good," she said, "because anything used in this operation must be non-toxic, legally purchased, and designed only to identify the person who opens the package." I understood what she was saying, and more importantly, what she was not saying. After Dana left, Elaine stood at the sink with her back to me. "You have that look," she said. "What look?" "The look you had when the county sent you a soil sample and everyone else said it was motor oil. But you said it smelled like somebody was hiding dry cleaning solvent. I was right about that. You were unbearable about being right." I walked over and rested my hands on her shoulders. "I'm not going to hurt anyone," I said. "I know. That is not what worries me." "What worries you?" She turned around. "I think some part of you wants Marlene to feel what she made everyone else feel. Exposed, humiliated, powerless." Elaine had always possessed the unsettling habit of finding the sentence I was avoiding. I told her she was right. I also told her I would build nothing that could burn, cut, poison, or injure. The marker would be theatrical, not harmful, and the federal agents would control the arrests. Elaine studied my face, then said, "Make sure it ruins the sunglasses." While Dana worked on the Warren package, Marlene began tightening her grip on the neighborhood. She sent all residents a notice declaring that privately installed surveillance cameras could violate community privacy standards. She proposed a $1,000 fine for recording HOA officials performing authorized duties. 2 days later, I received another violation letter, this one accusing my cameras of creating emotional distress. Rachel laughed so hard when she read it that she had to put the phone down. "Keep every page," she said. She was writing our defense for us. Marlene also started calling residents who had signed statements. Marjorie received a warning about her ceramic rabbits. Arthur was threatened with a landscaping lien over a dead patch of gravel, which I had not previously known was possible. Benjamin Holt was told his garage door was an unapproved shade of beige. Even though every garage door on the street came from the same builder, the message was clear. Cooperate with Calvin and the HOA would make your life expensive. Instead of frightening people into silence, it made them angrier. More neighbors came forward. A former board secretary named Evelyn Cross brought me copies of meeting minutes showing that Marlene had created an unofficial package protection program 6 years earlier without a board vote. The program had no written procedures, no inventory records, and no record of any package ever being returned. Then the HOA treasurer, Nolan Briggs, called me from a diner 20 miles away and asked to meet privately. Nolan was a cautious man who wore suspenders and spoke as though every sentence had to be approved by an insurance company. He slid a flash drive across the table and said he had been comparing HOA bank statements to Marlene's quarterly reports. Nearly $60,000 was missing over 4 years. Payments had been made to a consulting company registered to Marlene's brother in Arizona. Other checks were labeled clubhouse supplies, yet the clubhouse had the same broken blinds and ancient coffee maker it had always had. No one told me he had stayed quiet because Marlene knew his wife was struggling with early dementia, and she had threatened to spread rumors that Nolan was mishandling finances. That was when I finally understood the full shape of her power. She did not simply steal packages. She studied weaknesses, illness, grief, loneliness, embarrassment. She found the softest place in every person and pressed there until they stopped resisting. I sent Nolan's records to Dana and Rachel that night. Dana called 10 minutes later. The controlled delivery was approved for the following Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. Federal agents would be staged near the shopping center outside the gate, and a local detective would wait with them. The package would appear to contain a premium coffee tumbler, the kind Marlene could easily resell. Inside, hidden beneath tissue paper, would be a harmless forensic dye marker designed to release only when the lid was opened. I spent the next 6 days preparing cameras, testing angles, and confirming that the marker behaved exactly as intended without heat, flame, pressure capable of injury, or anything sharper than cardboard. Elaine watched the final test from the basement stairs as a cloud of brilliant purple coated a mannequin head and an old white blouse from a thrift store. She stared at the result for several seconds. "Calvin," she said, "that woman is going to look like a grape with a mortgage." On Friday evening, less than 24 hours before the operation, Marlene's husband, Victor, appeared at our door carrying a thick envelope. He looked older than I remembered and would not meet my eyes. Inside was a draft lawsuit demanding $1.2 million for defamation, harassment, and interference with HOA governance. It also sought a court order preventing me from speaking about Marlene to any resident, reporter, investigator, or government agency. I looked at Victor and asked whether he knew what his wife had been doing. His jaw tightened. He glanced toward the clubhouse, then toward the camera above my door. "Finally," he whispered, "you have no idea what she keeps in that storage room." Before I could ask another question, he walked away. I called Dana immediately. There was applause after I repeated Victor's words. Then she said, "Do not go near that room, Calvin. We will handle it tomorrow." At 1:56 the next afternoon, the postal carrier placed the controlled package on my porch, scanned it as delivered, and drove away. I sat upstairs with Elaine beside me, both of us watching the live feed. At 2:03, Marlene stepped out of her house in white capri pants, a pale green HOA shirt, and those enormous sunglasses Elaine hoped to ruin. She looked up and down the street, crossed slowly, and walked straight toward our front door. Marlene never looked toward our upstairs window. In her mind, cameras were decorations, police reports were paperwork, and neighbors were people who could be fined until they learned to stay quiet. She reached the porch at 2:04, lifted the package, tucked it against her hip, and looked straight into the camera with that same little smile. Elaine whispered, She really thinks she won. Marlene carried the box across the street, past her own driveway, and headed for the clubhouse. Dana texted me 3 words. "We have theft." I watched Marlene unlock the side entrance and disappear inside. For 30 seconds, nothing moved. Then the tiny camera hidden in the package showed a strip of fluorescent ceiling, the edge of Marlene's sunglasses, and her fingers pulling at the lid. The harmless marker released with a soft hiss. The screen became a wall of purple, and through the microphone came one quiet, startled word. "Oh." Then, louder, "What did he do to me?" Elaine covered her mouth, but the laugh escaped anyway. A moment later, the clubhouse door flew open and Marlene came out faster than I had ever seen any HOA officer move. Her face was purple from forehead to chin. Her pale green shirt looked like it had lost a fight with a grape soda machine. Her white capri pants were splattered down both legs, and her sunglasses were coated so completely she had to tear them off to see. She wiped her face with her shirt, spreading the dye into her hair and across her neck. Elaine leaned toward the monitor and said, "Well, now she matches her personality." Marlene ran home, stayed inside less than a minute, then backed her Lexus out so hard she clipped one of her own planters. Dana called as the SUV reached the gate. "We are following her. Do not leave your house. She is heading toward the pharmacy." Marlene later bought nail polish remover, makeup wipes, rubbing alcohol, and facial scrub, then spent 20 minutes in the store restroom. She came out exactly the same color, only angrier and smelling like a hardware aisle. When she returned to Copper Ridge, 3 police vehicles, a postal inspection van, and Dana's sedan were waiting in front of her house. Half the neighborhood had suddenly found reasons to stand near a window. Marlene parked and sat behind the wheel with both hands gripping it. Dana approached with a local detective, presented the federal warrant, and told her she was under arrest for mail theft, theft of government correspondence, identity fraud, and obstruction. The detective added state charges involving elder exploitation, possession of stolen property, and financial misconduct connected to the HOA. Marlene stared through a face so purple the whites of her eyes looked almost blue. Then she saw me in the upstairs window. For once she had no smile ready. As they cuffed her, she said, "I was protecting the neighborhood." Dana answered, "No, ma'am. You were protecting yourself from the neighborhood." The clubhouse storage room was opened under warrant less than an hour later. Victor had been telling the truth. Inside were hundreds of unopened packages stacked by street and resale value. Investigators found prescription bottles, bank statements, Social Security notices, birthday gifts, family photographs, medical equipment, and boxes of personal letters. Benjamin Holt's recipe box was buried beneath unopened appliances. Marjorie's photograph of her husband in uniform was still inside its shipping carton. Arthur's diabetic supplies had expired on a shelf. There was also a handwritten ledger showing what Marlene planned to keep, sell, return for store credit, or use as leverage against residents. The side had set HOA financial records proving the missing money was closer to $92,000. Some had paid for vacations and designer clothing. Some had gone to a consulting company controlled by Marlene's brother. Victor agreed to cooperate that evening. He told investigators Marlene had begun taking packages years earlier after finding one misdelivered box at the clubhouse. At first, she called it compensation for unpaid hours. Then she discovered how easy it was, how rarely older residents complained, and how quickly shame made them doubt themselves. Power did not change Marlene. It gave her permission to become more fully what she had already chosen to be. The criminal case moved faster than her lawsuit against me. Rachel filed an anti-SPAP motion, and the judge dismissed Marlene's complaint with prejudice, ordering her side to pay our legal fees. Months later, Marlene pleaded guilty to mail theft, fraud, and financial charges. She received 3 years and 8 months in federal prison, supervised release, and restitution exceeding $130,000. Victor received probation after cooperating, repaying his share, and accepting a permanent ban from serving in any HOA financial position. The old board resigned. Nolan returned as treasurer under independent oversight. Evelyn became president, and Marjorie joined the architectural committee, where her first official act was approving ceramic rabbits. Benjamin got his wife's recipes back. He invited Elaine and me to dinner and cooked her chicken pie from a card stained with 40 years of fingerprints. He said it tasted almost right. That was enough. Elaine and I used our restitution money to install cameras for older residents throughout the area. Within a year, package theft in our section dropped sharply. The neighborhood grew quieter, but not the frightened quiet Marlene had depended on. This was the quiet of people sleeping better because they had finally spoken. I still think about the purple dye. And I know some people will say I went too far. That public humiliation turned justice into revenge. Maybe they are right. I built a marker because evidence mattered, but I would be lying if I said I felt nothing when she walked out of that clubhouse wearing the truth where everyone could see it. So tell me what you think. Was the controlled delivery fair, or did I cross a line the moment I decided the thief needed more than handcuffs? Leave your answer in the comments. Tell me what your HOA has tried to hide. Share this story with someone who has been made to feel too old or too powerless to be believed. And subscribe, because the next story begins with a small-town diner, a stolen family recipe, and a line cook who waited 11 years to serve one final plate.